A few weeks ago, we released our preemptive cyber defense blueprint for SOC teams. And one of the questions that came up a lot was how do we start to use AI agents as part of this workflow? So I have one of the slides here up on my screen from the guide that we released. And generally, one of the things we talk to a lot of our users about is, okay, we have our log data that we're ingesting from our devices at the top here, feeding that into any kind of like data pipeline where we're doing any enrichment. We can match our indicators of future attack against this to start to take faster action. But one of the really interesting things is if that data ends up in my SIEM, I'm building my detections off of this. Um, Alert triggers like we might normally have to respond to, it gets fed into my SOAR. One of the things we can start to do is we can actually start to use silent push data to not only enrich our alerts, but also go hunting to find the wider cluster if there is anything out there. We've traditionally done this with kind of your SOAR platforms, but a lot of these kind of AI agents, these AI tools that are coming out there, agentic SOC platforms, really offer a lot of interesting things that we can use kind of in this gap here where maybe I want to identify the wider cluster, I want to go hunting for it back in my own logs, or I want to feed all of this into a watch list. There's a lot of really interesting things we can do now to make this a lot easier. So I'm going to switch over to my Tines instance quick. This was kind of the first version of this that we had built out. And if you've seen enough SOAR playbooks before, generally what we would do is we would go get our who is data. But a lot of times we would have to put in these kind of different checks. So I need to check for things like privacy, redacted, kind of a pain to maintain a big list of things that we always need to keep checking for in the kind of traditional SOAR workflows. If I am looking at something like who is data, to determine if there's anything relevant that we can query on. We're also going out, we're getting some web content. So based off the favicon of the domain and the title of the domain. But again, sometimes we see where the title might be slightly different across certain sites. Um, and then lastly, where we maybe have wanted to do a reverse lookup on an IP, if this returns, hundreds of domains on an IP, this can also be challenging to kind of automate finding other domains that get returned from this. So this is a really good starting point for kind of identifying a larger cluster, but adding in some of these AI agents really makes this a lot easier to start to kind of hunt and pivot and unveil a larger cluster. So in this case, I have a similar workflow, but sort of simplified down now. I have my who is agent that's running here. So now this is actually going out and determining whether or not the who is records for the domain in my alert is something that's useful that we can pivot on. If it is, we're going to start to use those fields to pivot. Same kind of thing. I'm doing my similar lookups. I'm doing my reverse lookups. But again, now I have these agents that I can use to start to process this data. And we can start to see at the bottom here, we've already kind of found one of these clusters based off of just doing these lookups, where before I have to write a bunch of if-else statements. I'm kind of doing a lot of string matching or writing a lot of regexes. Now we can start to work these agents into our workflows and really use this as a way to kind of do some of this matching and identification of these clusters. And again, these are all things that we can start to either go hunting in our SIM for to see, have we seen activity associated with some of these other domains? Or even just things like I want to put this into a watch list in order to see, if we did discover new infrastructure, maybe that we haven't seen used in a campaign against us yet. I want to have that on a watch list. So if I do see something that matches that, I can start to act faster. So really a lot of interesting ways we can start to slide these AI agents into our workflows and use this silent push data really for revealing a wider cluster of activity pretty quickly, just based off of our own log data and really starting to build our own preemptive defenses based off of your own data.